Yes, a pleasant good morning to all. The hearing is now resumed.
Mr. Giddings is enjoying a remote promotion.
No.
Yes, you are correct, Commissioner, but not along the path that you had thought. Mr. Anil Giddings is here. Bible. Did you affirm or?
Do you solemnly affirm to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir. Would you state your name?
Anil Giddings.
Yes.
And you had previously testified before this commission.
Yes, I have.
On the 28th of November 2022, did you attend at Ashman's building?
I did.
And sometime after 1 p.m. that day, you pointed out certain areas to the commissioners.
That's correct.
Now, so we have to get this on oath. So I'm just going to take you through each floor so that we can get on the record what you pointed out.
Sure.
All right? And then I have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
So, on the ground floor, did you point out to the commissioners the area which had been enclosed by glass, which had been used as the tabulation room or the RO's office for the March 2020 general elections?
Yes, I did.
And did you point out an entrance at the rear of the building where the statements of polls were brought in?
Yes, I did.
Did you also point out the area between the escalators and to the side of the escalator where the deputy returning officers were when they came in with their SOPs?
Yes, I did.
And you explained the process of how the SOPs had been delivered, correct?
Yes, I did.
Now, you went to the second floor and you showed us where the tabulation center, where you were based, was on this floor.
Yes, correct.
And you showed us the entrances to that office.
I did.
You told us that in that office there were several cameras.
Yes.
You told us that this was where the SOPs coming for the CEO was received,
That's correct.
or were received, I
Right.
beg your pardon. And you showed us the receipt area.
I did.
You also showed us where the receipt station had been set up,
Correct.
and you showed us where you later saw a scanner that you had spoken about in your testimony.
Correct.
You showed us the area where the commissioners, the GCOM commissioners, were based.
Yes, I did.
Now, I want to ask you, was the chairman also based there?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. You took us to the location where you said the runners would come from the RO's office to bring the SOPs for the CEO.
That's correct, yes.
You showed us the room where the server, which you had described, was kept,
Yes, I did.
and you showed us where you handed over the flash drive to the deputy CEO.
I did.
You showed us the area assigned to the deputy CEO,
Correct.
And very importantly, on that floor, you showed us a room which was used by a then government minister to hold a meeting.
Correct.
And that then government minister was Miss Karen Cummings.
Yes.
Now, I want to very quickly ask you this. Was it the protocol that GCOM's building would be used by any government ministers or officials?
No.
And in particular, I want to ask you whether during the election and verification process before the declaration, had you ever encountered any occasion when a GCOM building was used by a government official for any purpose?
No.
You're referring to the 2020 election?
Yes. This is tied back to his original
Yes.
testimony. Now, this is the room where you say you later saw the DCEO going into.
That's correct, yes.
You went to the third floor with the commissioners. You showed us the office of the CEO, and you told us that his office had a secretariat.
That's correct, yes.
I want to ask you whether you remember the names of his secretariat members.
Not offhand. No.
And you were asked about whether there was security set up, and you said yes, but you couldn't say whether there was any specific room
Yes.
that you could identify.
By security, you mean camera surveillance?
Yes, you asked about monitors, and you said you didn't know where the monitors were.
Right.
You also pointed out where the chairman was, the space for the chairman was.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, you also pointed out to us the platform where the returning officer had made the declaration which you had referred to.
Yes.
Good. Now, I hope I have not left anything out for you to confirm, but I want to ask you this. Are you aware that the server about which you spoke has now been delivered to the commission?
Yes, I know.
So I want to ask you a few questions about that server.
Sure.
That server was based in the tabulation center, correct?
That's correct.
Could any other person or group access that server, whether physically or electronically, from outside of that tabulation center?
No. Physically, no, because the center was manned 24 hours. And by way of network, no, because it was a network that was isolated to that room only.
And are you familiar with the term air gapped?
I am, yes.
Could you tell me what that means?
Well, for this purpose, the server and the entire network for the tabulation process was air-gapped, meaning it was free of any connectivity that would lead it to another network, whether in the same building or externally, like the internet.
So there was no way that there could be, should I say, symbiosis between the RO's office's data and yours. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you. These are my questions for Mr. Giddings. Thank you, Mr. Giddings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You need to take the oath.
Please raise your right hand.
Right.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Sir, would you state your name and address?
Edgar Thomas, Lot 1, Rock Walk, Leary.
And you gave evidence before this commission on a previous occasion.
Yes, I do.
And on the 28th of November 2022, you attended at Ashman's building
Yes, I do. I went there.
and you pointed out certain things to the commissioners.
Yes,
Well, I just want to explain that we are here today so we can have this done on oath. All right, so it forms part of the record. Now, you took us and the commissioners to various places in Ashman's building, and I'm just going to run through with you the things you identified. All right, if at any time I get it wrong, please feel free to correct me. So, we went to the 3rd floor of the building and you showed us where the chairman's office was,
correct,
and you said that you had seen her on that floor,
correct,
and you said that on that floor you had seen officers from this special unit, the tactical special unit, or was it special branch?
special branch. That was during the latter part of the day.
Okay. And you said that you had also gone up on the 3rd floor on the day that there was a bomb scare.
Yes, I went there.
You said you had gone to all 3 floors on that day.
Yes, I went there.
We went down to the 2nd floor and you told us that on that floor, while you were at Ashman's building for the March 2020 elections, that floor was the busiest part of the area,
Yes.
of the building.
Correct,
And you said that you also saw special branch officers on that floor.
correct,
You said that we went to the ground floor and you pointed out to a room, a small room off the returning officer's office. You recall that?
I did.
And that room had 2 fixed glass windows
Yes, correct,
and a door.
correct,
So you could see from outside of the room into the room.
correct, yes,
And that was the room where you said you saw Mr. Livan with the flash drive.
correct,
You also told us, you showed us the area where the tabulation room had been.
I did.
And you pointed out the area outside of the tabulation room, close to the entrance where Mr. Ronald Stewart sat, the security officer.
Yes, I did.
You showed us the entrance to the building and there is now a grill down in front of it.
Yes, I did.
You showed us where Miss Myers, the deputy CEO, was when she was instructing people to leave Ashman's building and telling them to get out.
Yes, correct.
You showed us where your station was, or you indicated where your station was in relation to Ashman's building.
Yes,
And you showed us where the bus with your ranks had been parked outside of Ashman's building.
correct,
You showed us where Senior Superintendent Azor had been when he entered.
correct, I did.
You showed the location where he stood with Deputy CEO Myers. Did you?
I showed the location that he was coming towards the deputy CEO.
Where he was approaching her?
Yes.
Yes, okay. You showed us where she was when she was speaking to then Assistant Commissioner Graham.
Deputy Commissioner Graham.
Deputy Commissioner Graham. You showed us where the TSU entered the building.
Correct, yes.
And you explained where the barricades outside the building had initially been.
Yes.
And you showed us where other barricades had been put up on the 6th of March, which were closer to the building.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to ask you this. Have I left anything out that you recall which you think might be of use to us? That you pointed out on that day?
One thing I think would have you might have left out from, or I failed to say, that I did not show the entrance or the exit that the TCOM commissioner actually went through after being escorted by Mr. Azur. That in the day, during the afternoon of the 5th.
Okay, so in the building, now that we have visited the building, can you give us an idea of which exit was used?
Yes. Into the building, towards the back step. I was standing there between the back step and the area that, the lower flat, that you could have seen straight through the glass door on the southern part, when I saw Mr. Azur escorting the GCOM chairman.
Out of the building?
Out of the building.
Thank you.
During that time, which I didn't mention, between the same door, between two doors, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa was trying to get to the GCOM chairman.
And what was anything preventing him from doing so?
The door was locked, and I gave the instruction for the door to be opened.
Was it open?
Yes.
Was he able to approach the chairman?
No, he did not get close to the chairman.
Well, why was that?
Because the time lapsed. By the time he get out, because the door was locked, and he was showing up, he had a piece of paper in his hand, which I saw, so I had to examine that paper. And then I gave that instruction, that yes, the door must be open.
Can you now recall, don't give me the full contents, but what was the piece of paper about?
It was a court order.
It was, sorry?
A court order.
A court order?
Yes.
Right. And so he was not able to give that to the chairman?
To the chairman.
I see. And what day was that?
It was on the 5th.
The 5th of March 2020?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, officer. Sorry, there are some questions for you.
No, Mr. Thomas, you gave instructions for the door leading to the chairman's office to be open so that Mr. Mustafa can go in.
Not to the office of Commissioner.
Sorry?
The low flat that Mr. At that time, I don't know exactly where the chairman was, but from all indication, Mr. Mustafa seemed to know exactly where he could have found order. And not only her, several GCOM personnel.
So what door was this that you instructed be open? The main entrance door?
Not the main entrance, the door just behind the tabulation room. There was a door there that we went close to.
Oh, I see.
That door was locked. And it prevented persons from the northern side to get to the southern side towards the stairway on the southern side.
I see. And when you said you gave instructions to the door to be open, to whom did you give these instructions?
The police rank that was manning the door at the time.
There was a police officer manning the door?
Yes.
Okay. I want to take you back to the first day you visited with us. On that occasion, you told us that in relation to the bomb scare, investigations led to the arrest of a man who had some connections with, I believe at the time, a permanent secretary in a government department.
Deputy Permanent Secretary.
A deputy permanent secretary. You couldn't remember at the time the name of the man, and you couldn't tell us what became of the consequences of that arrest. You only told us the man was arrested. You also said that you would endeavor to find out what became of that event. Did you first of all,
Commissioner, I apologize, but could I indicate that this witness, you will recall, had been transferred. We have conducted certain investigations, and we have.
that issue will be addressed?
Yes.
Okay, then I would pursue it. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't pursue that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Minister Ramsey. He's here.
Good morning. Right now. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
Good morning, sir. Would you state your name and your address?
My name is Charles Ramson. Ramson. 340 East Street, Georgia.
Mr. Ramson, you are now the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport,
That's correct.
and you are a member of the Cabinet of the Parliament of Guyana.
Of the government of Guyana.
Sorry,
yes.
of the Government of Guyana, I beg
That's
your
correct.
pardon. And you have given a statement in this matter which you have signed and initialed.
I have.
And if you see that statement again, will you be able to identify it?
Yes, by my signature.
Thank you. Going to ask that a document be placed in your hand. Please indicate whether you can identify that document.
Yes.
Might this be admitted as CR1? I have 3 copies for the commissioners. Thank you. Minister, in 2020, you had been appointed the counting agent for the People's Progressive Party, the PPPC.
That's correct.
And for what district was this?
District 4.
And this was for which elections?
The 2020 general and regional election.
By whom had you been appointed?
The elections agent for the People's Progressive Party, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa.
Do you recall the 1st of March 2020?
I do.
On that day, what did you do?
So around 9:30, I went to the Ashman's building in the company of Mr. Majid Hussein, who had asked me to meet with the returning officer for District 4, Mr. Mingo, and I met him at Ashman's building.
Were you introduced to him?
I was introduced to him by Mr. Hussein as the counting agent. He acknowledged that
Just a second, pause. When you went to be introduced to the returning officer, were you wearing or carrying any form of identification?
I was wearing the badge that I was given by the party, which was a GCOM badge that said counting agent.
When you were introduced to the returning officer, what did he say, if anything?
He acknowledged that I was the counting agent and said that he was aware
Aware of what?
that I was appointed the counting agent for the People's Progressive Party for District 4.
And did you have a discussion on that day, the 1st of March 2020, with the returning officer about anything at
I
all?
did. He and I discussed specifically what would be the process that would be adopted and implemented for the verification / tabulation process.
And this would have been for District 4?
Correct. In fact, the details went as far as saying that he would put the statements of polls onto a projector, onto a screen, so that everyone in that area would be able to see and verify the results, to see that it matches the results that we have for our statements of polls.
Well, I take it this was the first time you were speaking to the returning officer. At this first meeting, just tell us generally, how did it go? What was your impression at the end of the meeting?
It was the first time that I met him. It was the first time that I've ever met him before, and it was a very pleasant exchange.
Did you see him after that, on
Yes.
any day after that?
Yes, the very next day, at the evening, around 11:30 that evening, this would have been after the polls would have closed. I went to the Ashman's building so that to be available for when the verification process would have started.
And did it start?
So it started around 12:30 a.m. So that would have been the morning of the 3rd. So that very night into the morning. But at that point, not all of the parties had their statements of polls that they were receiving also on an ongoing basis. So I spoke to him about that.
Who's him?
The returning officer, Mr. Mingo. I spoke to him about that, and he agreed to pause the process and to recommence at 2:30 a.m., which it did.
Now, I want to take you, well, from the night of the 2nd to the 4th of March, you continued to act and play a role as counting agent.
That's correct.
So I want to take you to the 4th of March at about 4 a.m. Were you there?
Yes,
And did you stay there during the 4th of March?
that's correct.
Did you leave at any time?
No,
Did you return on the 5th?
on the 5th, that's correct.
Uh-huh. While you were there on the 5th, did you see any GCOM officials?
I did. I saw commissioners present, Mr. Saiskan Raj, Ms. Bibi Shadiq, Mr. Robeson Ben. I also saw the CEO for GCOM, Mr. Lowenfield. I saw as well Mr. Mingo, Roxanne Myers, chairman of GCOM. Those were the ones that were familiar to me. I saw some of the other members from the commission as well.
Sure. Now, I want to ask you this. Can you tell me how many GCOM commissioners there are?
Yes, there are 6 and a chairman.
Okay. And how are they appointed? Do you know?
So the respective parties would make the nomination. It's outlined in the Constitution.
Right. And by the respective parties, you mean
The political
the
parties.
ruling party and the opposition
That's correct.
party?
That's correct.
So only those two political groups are able to appoint GCOM commissioners, correct?
That's as far as I'm aware.
And then the 7th person chairs the commission.
That's correct. And that is a process of identifying the chairman is also outlined in the Constitution, which requires a list of names submitted by the leader of the opposition and for the choice to be made by the president.
I see. Now, at any point on that day, did you see the GCOM Commissioner Charles Corbin?
I did. I did.
Can you tell us very briefly in what circumstances you saw Commissioner Corbin?
So shortly after there was what purported to be the announcement by Claremont Mingo, I saw the chairman of GCOM coming down the stairs and Mr. Corbin huddling her as she was coming down the stairs, seemingly to prevent other people from getting close to her. So as she was walking, he was effectively engulfing her, moving from side to side. I remember this distinctly because it was one of the most peculiar as well as disturbing things that I saw around that period, which stood out because there were many disturbing things that happened at that time.
Sure.
But he was huddling her as she was moving, preventing anybody from getting close to her.
Right.
You are demonstrating from the witness box with arms outstretched. Is this how this gentleman was?
Exactly how it was. And
So he had his hands around the chairperson?
close, not touching, but maybe a few inches away, maybe 6 inches to 12 inches away.
And
moving.
she was in front and he behind?
As she was walking, yes, he was in front. Front and the side. So
So he was walking backwards?
effective, no, sides. As they were coming down the stairs, he was at the side of her, maybe like a step in front of her.
Sorry, yes.
A protective position, you would say.
It was like she was playing defense.
Minister, you say, or you characterized it as peculiar, but wasn't the atmosphere one of a commotion after Mr. Mingo made his purported declaration?
So on that floor, which would have been the first floor, there weren't many persons on that floor, or persons that were not functionaries with the authority or the permission to be there. So on the ground floor, there was more commotion, but this is on the first floor. There were persons like the ambassadors were there, the observers, the foreign observers were there.
It was crowded,
At that point, there weren't as many people.
but they were moving from the first floor to the ground floor.
Not when she was coming down the stairs. So most of the people were there on that floor when Mingo was standing between the top floor and that first floor. So he was on a platform between the two floors. And after that announcement was made and he went back into his office, at that point, it started to die down and most people went back downstairs. In fact, they were directed to go back downstairs.
So the commotion had subsided, you said?
That is correct, yes.
Minister, when you saw this, was the, I'm trying to get it clear in my mind, so it's from the top floor that the commissioner is, the chairman is being brought down, or she's coming down?
She's coming down.
Yes. Well, you have just described the situation on the middle floor. Did you see any threat to her at that time?
No, most of the persons that were there were, officials. So not persons that anyone would perceive as threats.
You mean GCOM officials?
GCOM officials or party officials?
Now, you have just referred to it, so you knew that the returning officer had made a declaration of the results for District 4.
Sorry, just to add to that, I just want to be very clear. GCOM officials, party officials, election observers, the foreign election observers, and the ambassadors. So persons with a profile.
Yeah.
So you knew that the returning officer had made a declaration of the results for District 4 from what you just told us.
Yes,
And this was on the 5th of March 2020.
that's correct.
As counting agent, did you do anything?
Yes, I had a letter prepared for the request for a recount.
Did you have any sort of legal time frame within which that had to be served on the required official?
That's correct. So we have up until noon of the next day. So the day after the declaration is made, we have up until noon of the next day.
So in terms of hours, can you tell us what that will be?
So it would have been about 24 hours in that situation.
Having had this letter prepared requesting a recount, what did you do?
It may be just under about maybe 20 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, what did you do?
Well, I attempted to serve this letter on Mr. Mingo, who was already up on the top floor, and I was blocked by police officers who were manning the stairway.
How did you know they were police officers?
They were dressed in uniform. And I stayed there for a while. Eventually, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, in this,
Just turned off the mic.
in this blocking by police officers, were you wearing a
Yes.
GCOM ID badge?
I never had my badge off. In fact, all of the videos you will see today, you will see the red strap around
The badge
neck.
was clearly visible.
Yes, and I also identified myself.
You identified yourself.
Yes.
And what response? With what response?
That no one is allowed up on the floor, on the top floor.
Police officers told you this.
That's correct. And I also asked them, I also told them what my function was. I said to them on what basis, what authority that I'm relying on, and they said they have their instructions and they have to comply with their instructions.
Did you perchance ask who gave the instructions?
I didn't.
Did you know any of the police officers?
I have never seen them before.
And did any of them identify themselves to you?
They were all wearing their badges, but I hadn't taken the note of who they were at the time.
So were you eventually able to access the upper floors?
Yes, so with the assistance of Ms. Bibi Shadiq, one of the GCOM commissioners, she assisted in getting me up to the top floor, eventually persuading the police officers. So, and on the top floor, when I went to serve the letter, what is very important that stands out as well is that all of the offices had steel doors. There were steel doors, but their locks, the handles were removed from the exterior of the door. So there was no way of turning a handle to get into the door. So, and then I rapped on every single door for a good 10 minutes or so, and no one answered. No door opened.
Now,
and there
you
was-
pause. You earlier spoke about there being observers at Ashman's building and so on. Can you recall whether any observer had gone up with you?
Yeah, so eventually when I was waiting, after I had rapped on all the doors, one of the observers who identified herself as Miss Cynthia Combi Martyr, she had identified herself as one of the CARICOM observers. I later knew that she was maybe the chair or the head of the delegation. But I told her of my experience, of what happened there, and she was the only other person that was on the floor at the time.
And when you say at the time, you mean when you are rapping on the doors?
Yes, just after.
Were there police officers on that
There were
floor?
police officers on the floor, but not many.
Did you speak to any of them?
I did speak to the police officers. I lamented about the situation, and obviously expressing my frustration about the unfairness of what was happening, but
Just a second, the commissioner has a question.
Yeah, just so that I follow what you're saying. I think earlier you said after Mr. Mingo had made his declaration, he went up to the third floor.
that's correct.
So you went in search of him.
That's correct.
It was he you were looking for behind those doors.
That's correct.
Did you ever get to see him?
Never got to see him. I never got to see him while I was on the third floor. I did eventually see him, and I'm sure we'll get to that point on the evidence, but I never got to see him while I was on the third floor.
One more question. It was important that you serve this notice or request for a recount on him. How long did you wait upstairs there, hoping that he might emerge, or hoping to gain access?
I was probably there for at least an hour. You'll forgive me if I can't give you the exact duration of the time, but I would say at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half would be the time frame I would estimate, where it was me and the police officers and a period with Miss Combi.
And you decided to leave?
No, I didn't decide to leave at that point, because eventually some paramedics started to come up to that floor, because questions started to be raised about the well-being and the safety of the chair, because I saw the paramedics come up with their stretcher and their medical equipment, and then more persons followed them.
And you remained
I
on the third
remained
floor
on,
at
I
this
remained
point?
on the third floor, so I didn't leave at that point.
And then did you see anything after? Did you
Yes,
see?
yes. So eventually, the same paramedics and the group of persons who came questioning and querying the safety and well-being of the chairman of GCOM, they were able to get the door open, one of the doors open, but through another room, and then eventually they were able to say that she was fine, she was safe. And then at that point, is when I went back down with the rest of the persons who came up on that floor.
So no emergence still of Mingo. Was he even up in?
Hadn't seen him. Hadn't seen him at that point. In fact, I'll tell you exactly when we get to that point when I saw him, and I captured it on video.
Thank you.
It is correct to say that you were allowed by the police officers to remain on that top floor for a considerable period of time.
That's correct. And during that time, just for the sake of completeness, I rapped multiple times. So I did a round. It had a circular shape of the design of the building. So they had rooms all the way around. So I did the tour
You
of
did
rapping.
some circuits.
Yes, I did a tour of rapping multiple times without success.
Right, so let's move on. You said that you saw the returning officer at some other point.
Yeah, so after I went back downstairs, I was there hoping that I would be able to see him again at some point. So waited for a while. It was already getting late into the evening at that point. And then I saw Mr. Mingo emerge from the top floor. The position that I was in, I was able to see what was happening on the top floor. And this is from the ground floor. And I saw him emerge, but he was circled by police officers, all in uniform, and they were rapidly escorting him down the back stairway, so another stairway, but I can see it because there were glass doors that you can see portions of when he was moving. So I ran with the letter, which I still had in my possession, to serve him. And then when we got through when we opened the door, moving into one of the sections, but still a little way away from him, police officers stopped me once again and prevented me from proceeding. And luckily though, I was able to capture some of that while I was moving. I captured that on video. Just a few seconds, but you can see the police officers, the tail end of them coming down that section of the stairway.
Can you say whether you were able to catch Mr. Mingo's attention?
No, never. And in my opinion, I don't think he was looking to catch anybody's attention either.
Did you tell the police again that you have a letter to serve him?
Full details. In fact, you'll hear some of that in the video. But again, we weren't allowed to go through.
They were unmoved. They were unmoved.
They were unmoved, and we were unmoved.
They were unmoved and on the move.
Well, no, this group that stopped us, they were stationary, and then there was another group that was on the move.
So, the returning officer was leaving the building from some stairs at the back of the building, you say?
That's correct.
What's the can you give us an estimation of the closest point you were able to get to him? Or get from him?
I would say maybe about 30, 40 feet away. 30 or 40 feet away, but there was a glass door that was separating the closest point where I was from where Mr. Mingo was.
So you were in a different section.
I was in a different section
where he was exiting.
But you can see straight through.
Sure. Did you rap on the glass door?
I didn't make it to that glass door.
Okay, so having had this letter prepared, did you send it? Did you try using any other method?
I did.
of
So-
sending it to the returning officer or any other GCOM official?
I did. So I took a picture with my phone of the request, the request for a recount. So the letter that I had in my physical possession, I took a picture of it and I sent it via WhatsApp to the chairman of GCOM, to Mr. Lowenfield, who was the CEO of GCOM, and also Mr. Mingo, who was returning officer for GCOM. I also sent a message identifying myself, and I have screenshots of those messages on WhatsApp.
Did any of these officials ever acknowledge receipt of your message?
No,
Did any of them reply at any later time?
no.
After this, I take it you left Ashman's building,
Yes,
and did you return on the 6th of March 2020?
that's correct. In fact, to get in there, there was a mob outside of the Ashman's building, but maybe about 100 meters away, and on attempting to get in there, that was when there was a lot of threatening happening, a lot of abusive behavior, and they were all wearing APNU, AFC shirts and holding flags, etc. But that's when I experienced that kind of threatening behavior, of which there's a video. And
Yes.
I'm sure we'll take it.
Okay, now when you went to Ashman's building on the 6th, was it open? Could you access it?
No, so the entire area was cordoned off. So no one had access to the area. Eventually, when I was let in to that section, there were a few other persons with me or that were there. I remember seeing some election observers. I remember seeing some of my party members that were leaders. And I saw Mr. Schumann, who was there. He was also one of the leaders for a political organization.
Did you see any commissioners?
Yes, Mr. Seiskan Raj was there for sure. I can't remember if there was anyone else. Maybe Mr. Ropes and Ben might have been there as well.
Okay. Well, knowing that you had this deadline of midday on the 6th, were you able to make it into the building before midday?
Yes, but let me just describe what I saw before I get to that point, because this was just the night before, and just for the days that preceded us being there on the 6th, the morning of the 6th of March. The shutters on the building, the steel shutters on the building was closed, and there was a metal frame that surrounded the building that prevented anyone from even getting close to the building. So that's what I would have seen. It looked entirely deserted. Occasionally police officers, I would see police officers passing through, but no one else was allowed access. And police officers did come and ask me about what we were doing there. I explained to them what I was there to do. But what is important to note is that the entire building, which is the office of the returning officer, was shut down. Steel doors, steel shutters were all closed and had no accessibility to the building. Eventually, around 11:50, we were told that we would be allowed to serve our letter. So at around 11:53 of that same day, AM. So just 7 minutes before the 12 o'clock cutoff point, we were allowed into the building. I was able to serve it on the clerk, the person who identified herself as the clerk for Mr. Mingo. Her name was Michelle Miller, and she accepted it on behalf of GCOM and Mr. Mingo.
Did she have any official GCOM identification as far as you could tell?
I can't recall if she was wearing any particular badge or anything like that, but she was, if I remember correctly, she was wearing a GCOM shirt.
And when you served the letter on her for Mr. Mingo, were you wearing identification as the counting agent?
Yes, I always had my identification on.
And she accepted your letter?
Yes, that's
on behalf of Mr. Mingo?
That's correct. In fact, it wasn't me alone who served the letter. A letter requesting a recount. On that day, I recall as well, Mr. Schumann was also allowed into the building, and he was also able to serve a letter requesting a recount.
Now, the party, your party, subsequently got a letter from the returning officer, correct?
That's correct.
And essentially the returning officer was saying that he didn't accept that you were a counting agent.
That's correct.
And you have a copy of that letter. You are able to produce a copy of that letter.
That's correct.
This is the same returning officer with whom you had discussions on the 1st of March.
On multiple occasions.
And acknowledged you, and you're wearing your badge.
That's correct. And on multiple occasions, and in fact, had specific discussions about the process that preceded on the day before, and then on the day and the days when it was happening, I would speak to him in that capacity, saying, for example, when we needed to pause because not everybody was in possession of their documents at that point, he paused it at my request.
So he was cooperative all along?
Absolutely.
Save and except for that 6th of March.
Well, on the 5th.
The 5th of March.
5th of March, yes. Started on the 5th of March.
You were one of how many counting agents for your party?
So initially, so the election agent has, according to the Act, has the ability to appoint counting agents and a number of other agents. I was listed as one among 4 or 3, but then ultimately I think I was identified as the only one for the region.
You told us that in your early engagement with the returning officer, he told you that he was aware.
He was aware
that you were appointed a counting agent for your party.
That's correct.
Yes, you're telling us about the letter.
Yes. But when you served this letter to Miss Miller, did she give you an explanation for the returning officer's absence?
No.
Did you ask for the returning officer?
I don't recall if I asked for him, but I said when I went in there that I am here to serve this letter on the returning officer. And this is when her, and there were maybe about 2 other persons that were in the room. If I remember correctly, it was Roxanne Myers that was there as well on that day, that said she is authorized to accept this on his behalf.
I see. Now, Minister, there was a second declaration later made by Mr. Mingo, correct?
That's correct.
And after that second declaration had been made, I think, when was this, the 13th of March?
That's correct.
Did you do anything in your capacity as counting agent for the PPPC?
Well, similar situation where the result that was declared, we, based on the statements of polls that GCOM gave to us, those results did not reflect the tabulation of the results that were given to us. And then there were some events that were happening where I wasn't present but had information about that gave great cause for concern. So I returned on the 14th of March. This was shortly after the conclusion of a court matter where similar situation where I attempted to go in. The entire place was closed again.
Where did you attempt to go?
To the Ashman's building, which was the office for the returning officer for District 4. And the place was shut down once again, and then towards the tail end of 12 o'clock once again, they opened the door and they allowed us to serve the letter requesting the recount. When I say us, I remember on that day, Mr. Nigel Hines was there. He also served a letter.
Can you remember which party he represented?
I don't remember which party he represented, but I was able to serve a letter on Miss Cummings.
And do you know what position she held there?
I believe she was a deputy returning officer.
When you say you believe, is it that she identified herself as such? She was wearing identification, someone identified her?
Yes, I believe someone would have identified her as that, but the details of that identification are a little bit hazy.
Sure, no problem. And she accepted on behalf of the returning officer?
Correct, and there were more than one person in the room at that time. So, in fact, I recall that there being about 4 or 5 persons from GCOM, persons who I had seen in some of the days when we were doing the tabulation. I had seen them in the office of the returning officer, some of whom, if I could see them today, I would be able to identify them.
Had any explanation been given for Mr. Mingo's unavailability?
No, none. In fact, I had not seen Mr. Mingo ever again until he was charged.
Okay. Now, what I want to be clear on is, to the best, you had gone back to Ashman's building on the 14th.
14th.
Yes. Now, to the best of, as far as you knew as counting agent, was there any change of the address of the returning officer?
No.
And when you returned on the 14th to Ashman's building, did you go to the same office in which you had been on the night of the 2nd of March 2020?
Yes.
With the understanding that that was the office of the returning officer?
Yes, so the same building. So in fact, just to answer your question with completeness, as far as I'm aware, if a returning officer office address has to be changed, it would have to be gazetted.
And when you returned on the 14th, were you wearing your
Always
identification as a counting agent?
Always wearing my badge.
Commissioners, I have to now go through the process of putting in some documentary exhibits, and then we have some video material. So, sir, you said that you had prepared a notice for a recount dated 5th March 2020. If you see a copy of it, will you be able to recognize it?
I would.
document is now being placed in your hand. Will you indicate
Yes, this is
whether
it.
that is the letter to which you referred?
It is.
I'm asking that this be admitted as CR2. I have copies for the commissioners. You said you WhatsApped this letter to the returning officer when you were unable to reach him personally, and you have that WhatsApp message, a copy of it.
That's correct.
Will you be able to identify it for us?
Yes.
Document is now being placed in your hand.
Yes, this is it. And you will note that for all three of the persons that I sent this to, there's a message at the bottom that I sent where I identified myself. And I've also said that there was a letter attached.
Might this be marked CR3 and copies for the commissioners? You said that you also WhatsApped the CEO of GCOM,
That's correct.
and if you see a printout of that, will you be able to recognize it?
Yes. And you would see, commissioners, that on the WhatsApp message, you will see a date. It also has a time. So I'll share it. So this is the screenshot of the message that I sent, and you'll see the date and the time that this was sent. And that is still extant in my phone.
This is, which WhatsApp message?
The one to the CEO.
That one is to the C. They're all the same, but they're just the receiver.
Different
Oh,
printouts, yeah.
Yeah.
So, would that be CR5? 4, I beg your pardon.
So essentially, I sent it to all of them at the same time, on the same date, and the messages were the same.
We also have a printout of the message you sent to the chairman,
That's correct.
and is that the printout in your hand?
It is.
Might this be admitted as CR6, 3 copies, 5 and copies for the commissioners? Yes. Now, you said that you subsequently received a letter, you saw a letter from Mr. Mingo on this, dated the 6th of March, which said that you had not been appointed as counting agent. If you see that letter again, will you be able to identify it?
Yes. Yep.
Might that be admitted as CR6? Oh, we might be getting to CR7.
I'm surprised you know that.
interested in the process relating to your appointment as a company agent. Your appointment as a company agent is your political party decision.
That's correct.
And that decision is communicated to GCOM?
That's correct. From the elections agent.
The elections agent being a party official?
A party official, that's correct.
And that was done?
That's correct. So, and we have letters to that effect as well.
Okay. So, Mr. Mingo's letter, CR 6. Thank you, Mr. Rami.
So we're getting to the most famous number, CR7. You refer to a letter of the 13th of March 2020. If you see it again, will you be able to identify it?
Yes, this is a letter that's prepared by me.
This is a recounted letter.
Request for a recount.
Sorry.
This is for March 13th, so this is after the second declaration.
Could that document be put back in the hands of the witness, please? So there is something in manuscript written at the top of the copy of this letter. Received the 14th of the 3rd at 9:27 a.m. Paul Jysing, DRO District 4. Is it that you had served or tried to serve more than one?
That's correct. So the Act also allows for the service of the letter on the deputy returning officers, and for the purposes of effecting the letter requesting a recount, that is, you can serve on the deputy returning officer. In fact, I recall checking specifically on the interpretation section of the ROPA, which says that for the purposes of for returning officer includes a deputy returning officer.
So this writing here,
Yes.
would it be done by you?
No, not done by me.
Person who received
The person who received
the
it.
DRO.
That's correct.
So, in addition to serving the DRO, what you had done is you had served the DRO, but you had still attempted to serve the actual returning officer by going back to Ashman's.
That's
building.
correct. You will notice the time as well. So this one says 9:27, and it says the 14th. So on that day, when we would have also had, I entered the building, I would say closer to 12 at that time.
So tell me, you handed a copy of this personally to Mr. Jysing?
I handed a copy, not a copy, I handed the letter requesting a recount to Miss Cummings.
But how?
So there are many DROs in relation to.
So I think what we are asking you is it that you gave Mr. Jysing a copy, or did you have original letters?
There were original letters that I signed multiple copies so that they can be served on the DROs as well.
Could you just, your second page
Yes, miss.
for information and checklists from GCOI, in the interest of transparency, that was done by,
That's not me.
that's not you.
No.
And that.
Anything in writing,
This is Jaising, yeah.
yes,
This is
anything
what you served on Jaising.
that was served on Jaising. So
And that is his writing.
I can only say that
Yeah,
I have
you
no,
served it.
I have nothing in writing came from me with the exception of the signature at the bottom of this
And
letter,
this was served on Jaising.
based on what we see here, yes.
Thank you. Yes?
Yes, so might we go to some video footage? So I'll ask you to,
Before-
sorry.
Clearly, this DRO, Dyson, supported this request for recount. And he said very clearly, assuming this is his note, which is signed, that it is recommended in the interest of transparency. Was there any response of which you became aware in relation to this recommendation?
No, no response,
Thanks.
no immediate response.
Well, there was a late response.
Well, ultimately, we ended up with a recount that happened many months later, but
not related to your intervention.
not related, and
Nor
not specifically.
Jaising's recommendation.
That's correct, and not specifically for Region 4 or District 4.
Correct.
So the answer to your question is actually not just immediately, it's never happened.
Yes.
So we have some video footage which we wish to have played.
And maybe
Okay,
you can
pause.
tell us as we start who is speaking there.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm speaking.
So could we just
Many days went by without shaving.
So could we get it started from the beginning and could we hear it, please? No, we are not hearing.
In order for an election result to be declared for every region, you have the people who hold positions that they do the right thing. In order for an election result to be declared for every region, you have to go through a verification process. The people in the media, Guyana, would have seen every single region go through that verification process. Since about Tuesday night, we have been trying to recommence the verification process. It started back somewhere along Wednesday.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Griffith to just stand and hold it up so hopefully commissioners, you and the witness, if you could stand
Yes.
around here so that it could be played. Are you all able to see?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
In order for an election result to be declared in every region, you have to go through a verification process. People in the media, Guyana, will see every single region go through that verification process. Since about Tuesday night, we have been trying to recommence the verification process.
Just in
Started somewhere along Wednesday afternoon, evening. The people who hold positions, that they do the right thing. In order for an election result to be declared for every region, you have to go through a verification process. The people in the media, Guyana, would have seen every single region go through that verification process. Since about Tuesday night, we have been trying to recommence the verification process. It started back somewhere along Wednesday afternoon, evening, and we got about 30 boxes and then it stopped. Okay, 30 results and then it stopped once again. Since then, we have been waiting to go through the verification process to complete it. It has never happened. And then Mr. Mingo, who is the returning officer for Region 4, attempted.
So that was shortly after. And that was a live interview that was done on the 5th.
And that was done in your capacity as counting agent
Correct.
for the PPPC.
Correct.
Yesterday, Ms. Joe,
Yes.
you indicated to us that there would be a transcript of the audio in these videos. I suppose that holds good for Minister Ranson's videos. And so
Of course, all videos.
Yes, thank you.
Can we go to the next video? This video is the video of the RO being escorted out of Ashman's, of which the witness spoke.
And you can hear some audio on that as well. So it's a very short video because yeah,
Can
it's
you
a,
tell us what was said there?
so I was speaking to the police and the elections agent, Mr. Zulfikar Mustafa. He was speaking, you were hearing his voice there, where we were telling them, the police officers that are in the video who had stopped me from going to that section where the glass is, and you can see persons coming down the stairs. That was Mr. Mingo being engulfed and surrounded by police officers escorting him out of the back of the building so as to prevent anybody from getting to him.
But I'm hearing the word recount.
So he is saying it is a letter requesting a recount. That is what he was saying to the police officers, to tell them that we're trying to get to Mr. Mingo to serve this letter. And
But could Mr. Mingo hear that show?
I won't be able to say what Mr. Mingo could hear, but because there was a glass between there, but
Dividing.
Was he in a position to see you?
he could have seen me if he was looking in that direction. I won't be able to say.
If he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he was looking in my direction, he could have seen me because you can see straight through the glasses. But I can't say if he was looking in my direction.
That's a fair answer.
Might this be admitted as CR9?
Yes.
And that video was taken by me. So I
Yes.
was the one that recorded that.
Now, the next one, which we are going to show, is one where the witness was being prevented by the police and other party supporters, not his party, from accessing Ashman's building. So,
And in this one, there is physical threatening happening here.
Physical threatening to you?
That's correct.
Now, candidate Charles Ramsden, who has suspected to be a threat to the returning officer, a provision that is created for in the law, he is being barred from going beyond the barricade. Police ranks say they are acting on instructions.
You don't care who you call, so can't keep us on
And the supporters are closing in. We there.
No, we ain't gonna leave. But he ain't gonna leave. We ain't gonna leave. He ain't gonna leave. You ain't gonna leave there.
We're going in there for you. Get right to go in there.
Absolutely.
That crowd is clearly antagonistic towards you.
And I couldn't understand why.
might this be admitted as
Did
CR10?
someone say, we could kill you
That's correct. That's correct.
in the presence of the police sergeant?
Multiple police officers.
Did any one of them do anything in relation?
No.
So that one should be CR10, Chairman.
In fact, there was no support from the police in relation to calming the situation down, removing persons from there. It was unsafe entirely.
So the next video, Commissioners, which I will ask you to view, is the one where this GCOM CEO is indicating that he is going to resume verification via SOPs.
I promised when I left, you will note the multi-time deliberations and the level of commission. Because they examine every iota of every subset that has to be commission has, as I promised, listened to that deliberation, and they have agreed that we will continue the process here with all those who are designated to be here to use statement to be statement. Yes. So that is what we will do for the remainder of the 3 months and variables we have counted for. So I think the staff will prepare statements, so we will do statements by statement starting I take it from 411, 111, 112, bond. I know we think that the issues of whether we have 67 statements that are should not completely not be resolved. I need to clarify that in my submission. It said you have not checked this 67, obviously you have not checked 4, I said you have not checked 5, and I instructed the bank to say to go on, well, confront you to what should have been done. So I need to ask you for, and for the agents and their assistants, once we recommence shortly, we prepare to be working through the evening to the conclusions so that we can move to the next substep, which is the declaration of the results of this report.
Mike, I think I asked for this to be admitted as CR11. Yes. So I'm now asking for permission for CR8 to 11 to be stored on CE1.
Yes.
So unless there are any other questions for the minister, these are my questions for him.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ransom.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much as well. All the best.
Thank you.
Chairman, these are all the witnesses I have for this morning. These are all that are here.
What about this also?
We are expecting persons to attend.
The hearing will now take the luncheon break and we resume here at 1 p.m.